Saved by the Bell. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today as we celebrate education globally. My name is Nkembo Kiala, and I am part of the Entrepreneurial Leadership faculty at African Leadership Academy in South Africa, Johannesburg. Our topic for today, effectively teaching entrepreneurial leadership. Before going any further, we would like to extend our gratitude to the organizers of this symbolic event. We hope that we're able to continue celebrating education in this manner for many years to come. Let's do some housekeeping. To our audience, you can access the captions function by clicking on settings next to the CC icon and select your language of choice. If our internet connection goes off or at any point we experience an interruption, we're asking that you kindly stay online as we troubleshoot and return to our live event in a timely manner. Using the Q&A function, we're kindly asking that you leave us comments and questions during our live presentation. We would love to hear from you. While our panelists share their perspectives in a short while, please send through any questions you may have. Some of your questions will be responded to by our technical team, while I will direct others to the panel during the Q&A at the end of the event. While we wait for others to join us for a prompt start at 12:10, please watch this Redefining Expectations video that will give you more insight into what we do and what we stand for at African Leadership Academy. This is a story of an ALA alum who dared ambitiously. Enjoy the video.
My name is Ngor Majak Anyat. I'm from South Sudan. Before I went to ALA, I spent about 6 years in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, where I received most of my education, mainly because in South Sudan we didn't have a lot of educational opportunities. Kakuma was one of the places that defined me, not only by giving me the opportunity to receive education, the condition challenged us to become entrepreneurial. So when I was in Kakuma, I did my grade 8 and happened to be the top student in the camp. During holidays, would grow vegetable to sell them. You had to figure out how to actually provide for yourself. So that really helped me think not only about, the purpose of education, but also beyond just going to school. How can I support myself? And I think that has translated into how I still think today. So I first heard of ALA from a friend. I saw in ALA as an institution, a place I thought could help me become the person I envisioned myself to be. And ALA was a place whose values encouraged that kind of thinking, that as young people we can do great things. At ALA, I was introduced to a new model of learning, experiential learning, where you actually engage and think about the materials. It made learning more fun. I think one of the most inspiring thing about ALA is the student. You interact with these people who are thinking beyond themselves, right? They're thinking about community, they're thinking about country, about the world. And you begin to think, can I do that too? After ALA, I went to the University of Notre Dame. After 3 years at Notre Dame, I decided to take a gap year and come back to South Sudan to establish a network of secondary schools that would use educational space for peace building and for leadership development. Today, if you were to Google South Sudan, all you see is violence, bloodshed. But really it doesn't represent the whole picture of South Sudan, or really the South Sudan that I am working toward. We really envision Greenbelt as a place where the 64 different ethnic communities in South Sudan can actually engage and celebrate their diversity, as well as break down some of the stereotypes that have been built over years. As much as we are having challenges right now, I believe with more effort and with more collaboration, we will have a lot of impact, not only in terms of providing quality education, but in terms of helping our younger generation conceptualize a different South Sudan. What gives me energy is the people that I work with, the young people, the hope they have for themselves, for their communities. And I think beyond the student, the young South Sudanese that are able to join me on this journey of helping our community. ALA did shape me a lot. It continues to shape me in many ways. And as we, start off our student on this leadership journey, I hope they can interact with ALA through some capacity or whatever form of interaction they have with ALA. I know it's just going to be as impactful for them as it has been for me.
I hope you enjoyed the video. For those that are just joining us, our topic for today is effectively teaching entrepreneurial leadership. Using the Q&A function, kindly leave us comments and share any comments you may have. Our community practice at ALA is the snapping of fingers. We do this when something resonates with you. If at any point in our presentation something resonates with you, join us in this shared community practice. The focus of today's conversation. Our first speaker is a Nigerian-born entrepreneur and my colleague here at African Leadership Academy. She is an entrepreneurial leadership faculty member and is leading our innovation agenda by driving the nuances in how we ensure that our students are effectively learning. Busola Majeko Dumni. Kindly, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nkembo. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you're watching. It is a pleasure to be sharing with you here today. Thank you for joining our presentation, and special thanks to our to T4 for creating this platform to share ALA's entrepreneurial leadership curriculum with you and with the whole world. At ALA, we believe that education should create leaders or develop leaders who prevent wars, entrepreneurs who create jobs, and innovators who solve the pressing problems of the world. We are starting with the African continent, of course. Today, we are going to be sharing with you 5 key takeaways on how we are doing this in our own school. So, the 5 key takeaways that we're sharing with you today are to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, create a lab to pilot ideas, use common tools, craft opportunities for practice, simulate by creating an ecosystem or market. Our innovation agenda at the African Leadership Academy is designed to ensure that our students are not only prepared for life in a fast-changing world, but that they are able to actually solve problems that they face in their own personal lives and in their community at large. Now, to dive deep into these 5 key takeaways. I recall a conversation that I had with one of our speakers, Cedric Wekesa, who is going to speak to you shortly during the panel session. Cedric shared with me a story of what he went through before he joined ALA. We were having a conversation about purpose and his journey, what he expected life would be post ALA. And for him, before coming to ALA, he imagined that he would probably be a medical doctor or work in the public health space. He didn't know that there was an opportunity to actually explore entrepreneurship on the side as he learned about science. But then he got an opportunity to intern with an organization or enterprise on campus, the African Leadership Consulting Group. There he worked on real-world strategic projects and learned to solve problems and learned business know-how. Cedric has gone on to start other organizations, Element Technologies and Logical Science. He's going to share more with us at the other part of this presentation. Cedric is not an isolated story in our ALA story. There are hundreds of other Cedrics. You heard from Majak if you were here during the introductory video. Hundreds of ALA students have gone through our walls or through our curriculum and are actively solving problems and leading in the space of innovation, whether within an organization or outside of an organization. So how have we actually achieved these success stories? I mentioned to you there are 5 key takeaways that you're going to be hearing from, and you're going to be hearing from us, and we had read them earlier. So now I'm going to go into each one, and they represent a framework that you can also use and replicate in your own school or institution, whether you're starting off an entrepreneurial leadership program or you're just teaching math, English, whatever it is that you're teaching. And then you can inculcate or incorporate entrepreneurship into what it is you teach. So here are the 5 key takeaways again. The first thing is to have a clear why. For us at ALA, our clear why is to develop an entrepreneurial leadership mindset in our students. Why is this? We know that entrepreneurship is not a panacea to all of the world's problems, but we believe, and research has shown and indicated, that entrepreneurial education, like the type we deliver in the EL department, can actually develop a certain skill set in our young students and leaders that will help them innovate, develop business know-how, and set them apart from the pack, such that when they get into a world where things are fast changing, they know how to adapt quickly and evolve, and they are not just reacting, but they can take the lead for themselves and for their communities. So have a clear why. Why do you actually want to start entrepreneurial leadership or entrepreneurial education in your school? For us, like I said, is to develop an entrepreneurial leadership mindset. Our goal is to develop a young leaders that are ethical and entrepreneurial in their mind and in the way, in their behavior and in their actions. We push them to do hard things, and they develop creative confidence to make a difference wherever they find themselves. Next is to create a lab. So for us at ALA, Entrepreneurial Leadership Department is a lab, so EL as a lab, but also within the lab, we actually have a build lab, which I'll explain in a bit, that our students get involved with. So create a lab. A lab is a place where you pilot and test ideas. It's a place for experimenting, for inventing and testing your different hypotheses on what should work for young people, especially as they're developing these very critical entrepreneurial and leadership skills. This is part of the learning process for both the school and the students. It's a place where you can embrace failure as an opportunity to grow and develop new capabilities. Case in point is within EL, we call Entrepreneurial Leadership EL. In ALA, we actually keep testing new ideas. So we're exemplifying what our students are meant to learn. So it's not just us saying do this. They see us, the faculty, the team, the old curriculum, constantly evolving, constantly creating new ideas and adapting. And we get feedback a lot from our students and saying, what should we do next? It's an iterative process. So within your school, within your classroom, create a lab, a place, not necessarily a physical place, but a forum to actually test ideas. And I mentioned we have Build Lab where our students also test their own ideas. So we push them, what's the problem in your community? What are you going to do about that problem? Next is to use common tools. Now you have a lab. What are you going to do? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't actually reinvent the wheel at ALA. We make use of already existing ideas and resources to teach entrepreneurship. By that, for example, I mentioned Build earlier, Build Lab. Build is an acronym that we have adapted and that we use as a model and a framework to teach design thinking. And it's the foundation for all the projects, the assignments, the idea generation, and all the work that our students do at EL. Build is an acronym for Believe, Understand, Invent, Listen, and Deliver. All of our students, when they come in at the beginning, it's a bit personal. It's about the self. Do you believe in yourself as a change lead, as a change maker? Can you make a difference? Identify what are the problems. Go after and understand those problems, listen to people, then come up with solutions. We brainstorm, no idea is irrelevant. So use common tools like that. Another tool is the business model canvas that we use when they get to the stage where now they have an idea, a solution. Can you test the feasibility? So write it out. What is the customer side, the producer side? What is revenue? What is costs? Who are your partners? So these are tools that already exist. We didn't create the BMC. We also use SWOT when we put them in teams, where we say, okay, now you're in a team and you're working on a project. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that faces you as a team? And how would you overcome and mitigate those? So there's so many resources. We're going to share with you some more at the end of our presentation. So use those resources and don't reinvent the wheel. Next thing you should do is to craft opportunities for practice. At ALA, and you heard from Jack earlier when he was talking about the experiential learning. We believe in not just talking about entrepreneurship as a textbook or as theory, but actually creating room and different programs and avenues for our students to actually practice, because it's by consistent practice that the skill, the mindset, the thinking that we want ingrained in them will actually be developed fully. So we have experiential activities such as the original ideas for development. This is where students they go into their communities over a December break and they've identified a problem, they speak to people, they're actually doing active research. So it's not just desk research, they're going on field and researching, and then they come back and they are also generating solutions, talking to peers, getting feedback. They call the users again and get feedback from them before they then develop. This grows on, we then put them in sectors according to the ideas or interests that they have. So their passion, their interest, we put them in sector and we push them to do the process again. So you see it's habits of practice. They do it all over again, and then it's the team who original ideas for development, which leads on to our annual Entrepreneurship Festival, popularly known as eFest. At the last eFest, we had an amazing team come up as first position that created a software. They're looking to create a software. They had designed the idea and the solution, prototyped it, of a software that would convert sign language for the hearing impaired into speech and text and vice versa. So this was going to promote inclusion. We had a project around autism and different things that our students do. Finally, is to stimulate by creating an ecosystem or market. In an ecosystem, entrepreneurship is not complete without an economy. So that ecosystem that we're encouraging you to create is a place where students can actually transact. You see the picture on the screen is an example of a market day that we had at eFest last year. And our students, this is a product by one of our students, Emata. This product was fully developed at ALA. She iterated, kept testing, students in the community patronized, and then at this eFest, she was able to showcase it to external members of the community who bought the product. An entrepreneurial ecosystem helps students to actually take what they've learned, the ideas they've generated, their prototypes, and make it a reality. In the Student Enterprise Program at ALA, we actually go all in. You don't have to start big like we have done, but you can start small. And at the other segment, you're going to hear from my colleague, Ms. Nolizwe, sharing with you different ways that you can actually practice and create an ecosystem. So for us, we have board of advisors after they've been put in student enterprises. Some of these enterprises have existed for more than 8 years. So there's that whole idea of continuity, because we believe that businesses should be passed on from generation to generation, and we're indirectly teaching that. We have the ones that are also startups, so that students can experience what it is to have an idea, launch it, ask for funds in our investment council that they go to and make their proposals and pitch for funding, whether it's a loan or a grant. So we actually stimulate the whole real world. And we have a banking system, Ecosim, which is a cashless bank where students actually transact with real money. Finally, we encourage students to patronize one another and support the ecosystem. So these are 5 things that we believe that you should be doing as well, or that you can actually do in your school to teach entrepreneurship. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Nkembo to share with you, to lead us to the panel session rather, where we would learn more from an angle of practice and also from a student perspective. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Busola, for sharing the 5 key takeaways and how these guide the manner in which entrepreneurial leadership faculty at ALA are effectively teaching entrepreneurial leadership. Moving on to our panel conversation. Joining us today to dig deeper into how we have been able to effectively teach and learn entrepreneurial leadership at African Leadership Academy are Nolizwe Mhlaba, who is currently working with the Anzisha program as the manager for the educator community, and Cedric Wekeza, who is a second-year student with us here at ALA and a member of the Element Technology Student Enterprise. For our panelists, I will direct questions to you. To our wider audience, please use the Q&A function to share comments and pose any questions that you may have. Moving to the panel conversation. A question on crafting opportunity for practice and the Student Enterprise Program and EcoSim. I'd like to direct this question to you, Cedric. Is there anything that you've learned that has helped you develop an entrepreneurial mindset in your EL class? And if kindly, please do provide some examples.
Most definitely. Thank you for the question, Mr. Nkembo. I think my answer would make more sense if I first took us back to what Ms. Busola mentioned earlier about my first few weeks at the academy. So what is your purpose? What gives your life meaning? These were the first sets of questions I was asked in my entrepreneurial leadership class last September. So it was my first month at the African Leadership Academy. The grandeur of the name itself is enough to assume that every single person who comes here has a really clear picture of what their purpose is. Well, I didn't. I remember looking around and seeing everyone in my classroom furiously jotting down what I could only assume were their life's goals. So the huge ways in which they're going to change the world and what motivated them to get out of bed every day. Ordinarily for me, this would simply have been an exercise on how well I could put unrelated vocabulary together to sound like I had it all figured out. This was, however, no ordinary moment. Every time I'd been asked that question before then, whoever was asking didn't really seem to care about the motivations behind my answers. When I simply said I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, this was different. I had a whole half hour to simply think about and write down what my life's purpose is beyond what was expected of me. And this time it felt like someone actually cared to understand my thinking. So I ended up spending that half hour daydreaming about endless possibilities. And at the end, I wrote down that I was simply a dreamer who believed he had a role to play in shaping the future of the African continent. It was that moment that shaped the direction that my life took since then. So it's yielded a yearning to explore what I was going to live up, how I was going to live out to my dream, how I was going to flesh it out, what my role in the grand scheme of things was going to be. And that introspective process in my EL classroom yielded the need to explore the offerings I had at the academy to discover what my purpose was. So that took me to the African Leadership Consulting Group for the start. So it's a student-run management consulting firm that only existed because of frameworks put in place by the Student Enterprise Program, to encourage experiential learning. So I interned from the firm and currently run it as its chief operating officer. This was a really scary choice for me because there was a point in my childhood where I did entertain the whole idea of business and entrepreneurship, but it was muffled every other time I saw a business my parents started fail. So I did, however, understand my parents' story was commonplace in the narrative of small businesses on the continent. So brilliant ideas, the right intention, but then not enough support. So the idea of working in a consulting firm, focusing on improving the overall performance of small businesses on the continent was just enchanting for me. But then there was just one problem. I had no consulting experience whatsoever. The most relevant skill I possessed at that time was the mindset I just recently began developing from that day in my entrepreneurial leadership class. So I had an analytical way of looking at myself and the world, sustained by this pursuit for understanding how I was going to live up to my purpose. So that mindset and engagement with the consulting group, EL and the SEP program allowed me to understand how to help people and organizations we worked with adapt to change while creating new socioeconomic value. So that period, really intense period of intellectually getting to the root of what was driving problems for our clients, allowed me see the world in a whole new light and what my role was in shaping it was going to be. So now, armed with the right mindset, every other thing I was taught in the classroom, from idea generation, coming up with a business model, project management, assessing financial feasibility of the people that we worked with, resource and customer acquisition processes, they all serve to make me a more agile thinker and, most importantly, actor. So to make it even better, I got a chance to really roll up my sleeves and get real world experience by launching and running a student enterprise on campus, Element Technologies that Mr. Nkembo alluded to. So where my amazing team and I are working on helping young entrepreneurs properly navigate the fourth industrial revolution by providing data and technology-driven marketing solutions. So website design and development, the whole package. So if you told me a year ago that I would be making financial projections for my enterprise, working with my team to figure out how we're going to get thought partners to improve the quality of our website design, mapping out our customer lifecycle processes, laying down frameworks to direct the operational and business strategy for management consulting firm, working with small businesses across the continent, running my own company, I'd have laughed you off. But here we are. So in answering your question, Mr. Nkembo, I think the most important thing I have learned in my EL classroom and throughout this engagement is just simply how to be an agile thinker who can both create and make the most out of opportunities to make a difference.
A question on entrepreneurial leadership and mindset in students and very young entrepreneurs. I'd like to direct this question to Nolizwe. What are some of the trends you have noticed working with very young entrepreneurs? What are some key skills and mindsets or competencies that enable entrepreneurial learning?
Great, Nkembo, thank you for that question, and hello to everyone who's on the call. I'd actually like to start by picking up on something Cedric said. He referenced the fourth industrial revolution. Generally speaking, jobs aren't being created quickly enough to absorb new entrants into the labor market. And this isn't just a matter of skills. What we're seeing is an opportunity crisis where even graduates, young people with qualifications, are facing tremendous challenges in this regard. So I work for the Anzisha Prize, and what we do is identify, connect, and develop very young African entrepreneurs who are aged below 25. So I'll share a few observations we've made from 10 years of doing this work. The first is young people are pursuing entrepreneurship and they're hiring other young people. So for example, since 2011, Anzisha has identified and supported 122 young entrepreneurs who have gone on to create over 2,000 jobs. And about 56% of those jobs are held by young people who are below the age of 25. And I think that's really impressive. A second observation is in the youth entrepreneurship ecosystem itself. Young entrepreneurs don't receive nearly enough support. I think we're all aware that entrepreneurship is a difficult path, and the age filter merely surfaces additional challenges. So there's work to be done by each of us as stakeholders in that ecosystem. A third point I would highlight, and that's perhaps of most interest in this discussion, is that there's certain gaps, or there's certain skills and competencies and mindsets that young people need to navigate post-secondary transitions, as well as the future of work. And Cedric mentioned some of those. For example, financial literacy, collaboration, communication, problem solving, right? So how do we equip young people to identify problems that matter, or at least the root causes of problems, and to develop creative solutions? How do we enable young people to be self-directed learners who are agile and critical thinkers? And so whether we label them as 21st century skills or future of work skills, pardon me, or the world of work skills, the reality is the 21st century is here and now. The future of work is here and now. And so the imperative for entrepreneurial learning is here and now. And it's a ripe opportunity for all of us as educators to work towards building those skills and competencies and enable entrepreneurial thinking and behavior in our students.
Thank you very much, Nolizwe, for sharing those thoughts and emphasizing the urgency in us acting now. The next question is on entrepreneurial leadership mindset in students and very young entrepreneurs. And I'd like to direct this question to Cedric. Cedric, post ALA and your application of EL, what do you anticipate? What does the world hold for Cedric?
Thank you for the question again, Mr. Nkembo. I think I have had to really actively think about this for the past few weeks, and this isn't necessarily a post-ALA thing, but with both the African Leadership Consulting Group and the Element Technologies for the next 2 months, I'm really keen on ensuring that we properly equip ourselves with the right resources and mindset and capacity required to allow us actually radically transform the entrepreneurial ecosystem of the African continent, as we hope to do. So advising young entrepreneurs on how to set up and grow their businesses, making the best possible websites to open up these businesses to the outside market, and etc. So I'm working on establishing partnerships, optimizing our internal operations, capacity building, all the works. So my engagement with the entrepreneurial leadership and student enterprise program here has really shaped the rest of my work in a huge way. So as I transition from the academy, a philosophy that I think I will really draw from entrepreneurial leadership as a whole and the student enterprise program, and it's something that Mr. Bradford, the CEO of the African Leadership Academy, has mentioned to me in quite a few occasions, is for every single thing that I'm going to do, I really should be aiming to operate in that world-class level. And to do all these things at this stage, I would really need to have a keen focus on the type of work I engage in. So something that will be a key part of my post-ALA journey is a nonprofit organization I run, Logikai Science. So for the foreseeable future, we are set out on understanding and seeing how we're going to deliberately build an ecosystem of young science researchers that I believe are going to drive the kind of disruptive innovation that not just the African continent, but the world so desperately needs. So in supply chain, education, healthcare, all the works. So my team and I are really working towards establishing a fully fledged STEM research high school. I have to pause there for now. I know it sounds crazy that a bunch of 17 to 20-year-olds will be spearheading a project of this magnitude. It isn't. Isn't it Steve Jobs, one of the biggest game changers of our time, that said the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who actually do? So we are such a really crucial inflection point in history, and it's even more important for young people to rise up and meet the challenge head on and accelerate this inflection point. One of my icons, Vusi Tembekwaya, puts it best. Our generation is tasked with the responsibility of redirecting the trajectory of the African continent towards a path that will lead to continuous bringing the world innovation. So what Logikai offers to all of us, and is why I'm really keen on ensuring that I do dedicate a lot of my time towards building it up, is a vehicle through which we can exercise the mandate that we have to ensure that we continuously innovate better and more sustainable ways of doing things. So, like I said, supply chain being king in one of them. So this is a responsibility we owe to not only ourselves, but our families, communities, countries, continent, and humanity at large. So the African continent and the world are in such desperate need for more crazy people who are willing to do the hard things. Dreamers who are, yes, terrified by their dreams, but understand why they need to act on them. Innovators with a thoughtful drive to put a dent in the universe while doing what they love. So we, as I said, are a crucial point as the world, but then as an organization, and the next few months are going to be even more critical to the scale of impact that we intend to have. So our diverse pool of researchers are currently finalizing the design of a research fellowship that will be launching in a few weeks. Our team of technologists are preparing to launch learning management software that I believe will really push the tab on innovation in EdTech. And we're laying down groundwork for a global conference where we hope to initiate conversation on the role that pronounced investment in R&D can play in like really leapfrogging development on the continent as a whole. So bringing together global thought leaders, young people, policymakers to have dialogue around these topics. So we're also working on how we're going to create this space for young innovators that it's being deliberately designed to accelerate the growth and success of innovative entrepreneurial ventures. So it's going to be an interesting and busy couple of months for me, but I'd say some of the most fundamental organizational principles I have learned have been through my entrepreneurial leadership class. And it certainly allowed me to understand best practices and how to properly harness my team's collective effort and really lead with that innovation in mind, dream and then continue acting on that dream. And I'd say all of this would really have not been possible to the scale at which it has been without much involvement from my entrepreneurial leadership teachers, the academy as a whole, my mentors personally, and something that I'm tremendously grateful for.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Really inspirational. Making a dent in the universe by doing hard things. And we wish you all the best with Logikai. A question on the use of common tools and resources. I'd like to direct this to Nolizwe. What should practical entrepreneurship education look like? Possibly, can you reference the work that you do with Anzisha in supporting these very young entrepreneurs and what the role of early entrepreneurship education is?
Thank you for that question, Gembo, and also congratulations to Cedric. It's really exciting to hear you talk about a project as big as Logikai Science, undaunted by the risky nature of it. So I think that in itself is an important outcome of practical entrepreneurship education, right? So you're working to build confidence in your students so that they can dream big and take measured risks. So all the best again, Cedric, with that project. In response to your question, Gembo, we can think of entrepreneurship education in 3 parts. So there's teaching about entrepreneurship, and that's building the knowledge. There's teaching for entrepreneurship, equipping with skills. And finally, there's teaching through entrepreneurship, and that's facilitating application of that knowledge and skills. And it's also important to articulate what your objectives are, right? So your why needs to be clear. Are we teaching students to start businesses or create ventures or create value? Are we teaching them to apply certain kinds of knowledge and skills in their day-to-day lives? Now, these are not mutually exclusive, but if you have a plan, so the curriculum that you've developed, that can help you stay on track and let you know how you are doing. And related to that perhaps is just design thinking, which was mentioned before. I think that's such a vital component of entrepreneurship education. Another point that was raised earlier is just creating opportunities for practice. And I can share a few examples. One short-term and relatively low-stakes opportunity is a market day. So Busola talked earlier about Hair Matter and Enterprise Best at ALA, and she cited Hair Matter, pardon me. Students can apply sales and marketing strategies to their customers. They get to pitch their products or services, so they're learning how to communicate with for a given purpose and to a particular audience. And prior to that, you know, they get to think about pricing, right? And they're practicing how to set goals. So what's our target? How many products do we want to sell? How many customers do we want to reach? That sort of thing. Another example for practice is an entrepreneurship club, and this could be an extracurricular activity that is actually driven by student interest. And then the third example I'll share is one that's been referenced quite a few times in our session, and that's the Student Venture Program. So you could simulate an economy on your campus. So bring in real life conditions so that the experience is authentic. Students at ALA pay rent, they pay taxes, student enterprises, I should say, pay rent and taxes. And they also get to pitch to an investment council, and that requires an understanding of different kinds of funding, right? Is it a loan? Is it a grant? Is it equity that we're seeking? And then they're also held accountable in their enterprises by a board, which often comprises external members. And finally, you know, they conduct transactions with real money, so they get to practice in a safe enough environment for them not to be dissuaded by failures that they might experience in this simulation. So we can also think about practical entrepreneurship education as a team sport, right? There's a coaching element. You as the teacher are a coach. There's training, you're raising fitness levels. The team is learning how to conduct the sports. They're learning how to work with others. They're learning how to give and receive feedback. And then what comes after, if we then think of this, if we think of post-secondary transitions into entrepreneurship, is a set of young people who might go pro. So they might become entrepreneurs right after they leave school. And then you also have a set of young people who are more familiar with what entrepreneurship is like. And so they have empathy towards those who pursue entrepreneurship, so that, you know, they can go on to be policymakers and they have an awareness of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And so their actions can enable even more people to pursue entrepreneurship. And so just my final remarks are just an encouragement to educators to work with what you have in your context. There are many freely available resources online, but if you don't know where to start, I invite you to join the Anzisha educator community. We've created as well as curated resources, and we also seek to foster collaboration among entrepreneurship educators. And so I think that could be a good start. We can work together to start implementing practical entrepreneurship education in our various educational contexts.
Thank you very much, Nolizwe. I think key there is working with what we have and the potential of collaboration. Thank you for that. At this point, I would like to bring into the discussion my colleague Busola. and we will start taking questions from the wider audience. So I'm encouraging everyone to continue populating the chat, the Q&A function with any questions or comments that you may have. The first question, I'd like to address this to Nolizwe, and perhaps Busola, you can give a comment straight after. The question reads, it's by Anonymous. For guardians and community organizations, what are some best practices for identifying leadership in teenagers, and what are some non-higher ed ways of developing that capacity for betterment of the community? Over to you, Nolizwe.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it's important to expose young people to different styles of leadership and to be able to call out those moments when they demonstrate that leadership. It's important also, I think we can create student leadership opportunities in the classroom as well as outside of it. And coming back to my earlier point about showing them different styles of leadership, it's also important to show them relatable examples. So something that comes to mind for me is the Nzisha It Starts With You campaign. So this is a series of stories of young entrepreneurs from across the continent, and it just shows what their entrepreneurial journey has been. And these are young people that are probably not that much older than some of the young people we work with. So just to say, here's what someone who looks like you and with whom you might have shared experiences has done to identify a problem in their community and to come up with a solution. And so I think we don't need to look too far for examples or role models of leadership, and also just I would encourage us to call out those behaviors as we see them, so that people are aware that, okay, this is what leadership can look like, or entrepreneurial leadership could look like in our context.
Thank you. Busola, kindly care to comment?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nolly, for those tips. Those are very poignant. And I'll just add that, like you said, to use case studies, especially for community organizations. Use case studies. We have the Nzisha case studies, which we'll share in resources, and there are stories of young people that are just like them, a few years older, and that will always inspire. And at a community organization level, what we also do is, whether you're organizing an event, whether it's a one-day event, create experiential activities. And in those moments of students just applying themselves to, whether it's a icebreaker or they're just asked to tackle a problem, identify a solution, you start seeing those moments of leadership, those pockets of collaboration and listening skills that they exemplify in those moments. So, and for guardians, call it out, encourage your words when you see them do something that is worthy of note. When they share with you a crazy idea, do not shut it down. That's a moment to actually ask more questions. That way you develop their curiosities. I would say also use that as an opportunity. So when your words or students, participants actually say something that might pique their interest, pay attention to it by asking them more questions about it, or even sharing books or short videos. I remember I would show videos in the classroom or at our own community events back in Nigeria of young people like themselves, because as Nolly said, when you see people that look like you doing something exemplary, it motivates you to do the same.
Thank you so much, Busola. A question from our audience, and I'd like to direct this to Cedric. And the question reads, Cedric, what is your business? What is the product or service that you deliver, and how has it grown over time?
Okay, I'm not quite sure which one to start with, but I think I'll start with Element Technologies then. So at Element Technologies, for the past about 7 months or so, we've been really keen to help entrepreneurs and young people just starting up with their business develop their websites. So because just based on the thinking that we would want them to get access to a wider market to provide their products and services. So we mostly help them around website design and development, and also do a bit of work around digital marketing also. And we're slowly trying to see how we're going to start incorporating services into our portfolio, falling around IT consulting related services. So if there's anyone out there who's in this industry or this field that would want to have a conversation with one of us, I'm sure Mr. Nkembo or Ms. Bisolo or anyone else could really easily reach out to us. And the other one, after African Leadership Consulting Group, as I mentioned earlier, we are a student-led management consulting firm. And the whole vision of our organization is to see how we're going to play a role in radically transforming the entrepreneurial ecosystem of the African continent. So our clientele base, our niche focus is on small businesses, because all these businesses account for about 90% of the businesses on the African continent. So 60 to 70% of employment on the continent are sourced from all the small businesses. But then we felt that there wasn't that much support systems, as the case of my parents when they started their own businesses, to ensure that they know what direction they need to take. So what our role is, we come in and we help them around business process improvement, management issues, operational efficiency, and we literally help them build an engine that can turn the aspirations they have or whatever state into reality, and ensure that we accurately measure and report on the progress that they're making over time, to ensure that our recommendations are actually adding value to them and in turn to their communities. So we have a really wide portfolio of clients that we've worked with across the continent and the world recently. And it's something that we're really looking forward to ensuring that we scale up and build our own capabilities to really add value to all the clients and businesses that we work with. And I think that should sum it up on the business side. And Logicae, like I said, what we're really aiming to do is to see how we're going to create this ecosystem of young science researchers that are going to drive innovation and growth in different sectors. So wide applications of STEM research. And I'm sure it's something that may not be quite clear to grasp as a hand, but we really I personally look forward to what's going to come next on all of this.
Thank you so much, Cedric. And perhaps a comment in the form of an encouragement from Margaret Nkrumah. She states, "Bravo, Cedric, a real credit to ALA. Such passion and conviction. He leaves me inspired and hopeful for Africa's future." Thank you very much for sharing. Just looking at how much time we have left, perhaps we'll take this last question, and it's a very crucial one as is. And the question is from Anonymous, and it reads, what is the one tool that you think has worked really well in your curriculum that can be replicated in other schools? I'd like to address this question to Busola, kindly.
Thank you, Nkembo, and thank you for that question. That's the whole idea of this event, is to identify that one thing that you can start doing. And for us, I would say it's the build challenges that we do. They're one-day events or one-day activities that you can run within 2 to 5 hours. Build, remember I said it's an acronym word, a design thinking model that we use, and we have these challenges that are sector-based. We have one for education where the students are posed with an SDG 4, that's the Sustainable Development Goal 4, on education need within the context of their community or their countries, and then they go all into different groups and they actually use the model of believe, understand, invent, listen, and deliver. And we have it for different sectors. So that's one tool that we believe you can easily use to introduce your students to entrepreneurship. And this works really well because when we do those build challenges, it just really sparks off that interest in the students. And when they have like a gallery walk where they walk around and see other solutions that different groups of students are put up for the same issue, so the way they've interpreted the issues across different countries, whether it's parts of the continent, East Africa, West Africa, it really just enables the students to think, oh, we can do this, or wow, that's a great idea, and they take it on from there. So I would say build challenges, and you can access this when you join our educator communities, and you have access to the ready-made challenges that you can just replicate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Busola. And that is all the time we have for the Q&A. So we thank you, wider audience, for engaging with us. There are some resources that have been posted in the chat, but at this stage, I'd like to ask Busola to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Nkembo. Thank you all for watching today. I would just say that I'm sure you've picked one or two things. 5 key takeaways. I'll go through them again. One is to have a clear why, develop entrepreneurial leadership mindset in your students, craft opportunities for practice, use common tools, simulate an ecosystem, and create a lab. Now I'm just going to hand it over to Nolizwe and Cedric to just share with us one final word that they want you to take away from a student perspective and from an educator perspective before we show you our final video. We also have an Anzisha event coming up shortly next week on the 27th of October. Please join us. The Anzisha conference is in the Q&A as well for you to access it. There we showcase very young entrepreneurs that we have selected across the continent. Nolizwe, over to you.
Thank you, Busola, and thank you everyone for your questions. There's some great ones that we didn't get to, and I hope you will engage with us after this session so that we can continue the conversation. So my final remarks would be to educators, just an encouragement to once again have a plan, create opportunities for practice, leverage your network, because this isn't a one-person job. There are many people we can turn to within the ecosystem to help us enable young entrepreneurs or would-be young entrepreneurs. And then also just get started and model the behavior, the entrepreneurial behavior and thinking that you would like to see in your students. Thank you.
Final comments, Cedric?
Okay, on my end, for educators out there, it would primarily be emphasizing the importance of really giving your students opportunities to explore and learn more about themselves and allowing them fail in the process, but then being with them, holding their hand throughout that whole process so they can learn from their failures and then use them to grow. And then on the entrepreneurs in the room and people looking to actually start up something, it's important that you, yes, have a plan, well laid out and everything, but then the most important thing is the execution. So you just have to start. And when you do start, it's important to be very deliberate about the process, be patient with yourself, and understand that it's a learning process that you would have to be a part of. So that's it on my end.
And thank you so much, Cedric. Kindly refer to the resources slide that will soon go up. And I'd like to leave you with a parting thought in the form of a question. How could you potentially teach entrepreneurial leadership? Thank you all for joining African Leadership Academy's take on effectively teaching entrepreneurial leadership. And we encourage you all to redefine expectations, regardless of contextual constraints. Moreover, be courageous and dare ambitiously like Majak. We have shared our best practices as the 5 key takeaways from our experiences in developing the next generation of African leaders in the hopes that you will be able to implement them as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vikas Pota. The reason why we organized in this Global Issue Week is we believe that schools have incredible expertise in making sure that learning outcomes improve. Given the state of the world, we want to see the expertise from this particular school being replicated in schools all over our planet. So that the world becomes appropriate for participating. And I look forward to seeing you in many of the other events this coming week. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for supporting this incredible work, without whom we couldn't have put together this global showcase. Thank you, and I wish you well for this event.
Fast-paced social, economic, and technology-driven change is redefining our world. And having a broad range of skills, such as creativity and problem solving, has become far more important than being able to memorize information. To redefine how our children learn and to empower them for the future, parents, teachers, and policymakers must stop overlooking a powerful part of the solution: learning through play. Play is the rocket fuel of child development, and there is a growing body of evidence to support that play is fundamental for children's positive growth and well-being over time. It is also an essential way to foster the skills required to thrive in today's world. The LEGO Foundation aims to build a future in which learning through play empowers children to become creative, engaged, lifelong learners. To do so, we work with a range of partners around the world to change the hearts and minds of all of those who influence children's lives through our programs, research, and advocacy, so they can all embrace the transformative power of play. Examples of what we do include making sure that caregivers, practitioners, and policymakers understand the importance of play, investigating, testing, and scaling new ways to bring play-based learning into homes and schools, using play to help millions of the world's most vulnerable children cope with adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress, or conducting research with some of the world's leading research institutions. Please visit our website and follow us on social media to learn more.
Language connects us all. It's how friendships are formed, ideas are shared, and lessons are learned. Language is how we find understanding and express love. It's how we communicate our successes, both big and small. It lays the groundwork for learning and growth. And for an increasingly diverse student population, it can be the key to achievement in school and beyond. That's why Rosetta Stone Education is dedicated to language and literacy. We offer solutions designed to support teachers and their emergent bilingual students, recognizing and celebrating the knowledge, culture, and languages they bring to our classrooms. Our products are founded on the adaptive blended learning model for individual needs, continuous progress monitoring for better learning outcomes, and culturally responsive pedagogies for more inclusive classrooms. With solutions aligned with proficiency standards, we support language learning while exploring academic subject areas, paving the way to better outcomes. Because for all of us, language is everything.
Dear T4 community, we talk a lot about teachers these days, but we rarely listen to them. Therefore, I'm truly excited to join the T4 World Education Week to hear from teachers and school leaders all over the world how we can impact learning together. I'm particularly looking forward to the global showcase. 100 schools sharing their expertise and best practices, I believe, will be a huge motivation for other schools around the
as mentioned in prior
I'm equally impressed by the T4 Solutions Challenge, its finalists and their solutions to real-world issues in education. This gives me hope that we can, together, turn around education globally. The Jacobs Foundation is a proud supporter of the T4 World Education Week because we share a vision to reimagine learning and education by bringing together the brightest people who understand how children learn. Let's do this together.
For a few more attendees to join, and then we can kick off at 4:05.